Okay, so we're continuing on with your time with Mr. Iyengar. What would you add to the teachings of yoga after Mr. Iyengar? Like, what if I know you took a different path? Would you be willing to talk about some of that?
Yeah, I almost accidentally ended up having an experience when I was in Pennsylvania. I was staying at my sister's, and before that we were at the ashram in Pennsylvania. We're walking around, this guy Mukesh Desai is with us, and he was kind of funny. So I asked my sister, I said, take him home with us. She says, he comes all the time anyway. So we took him home, and I did not know this about him. I knew that he was a singer, but I did not know the quality. He was one of the wonderful top students of Jasratji. So we took him home. Next morning, he's in one room, I'm in the room next to him, and I got up to do my practice, and he started what they call riyaz, which is da 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 da. It just can be annoying. And I thought, oh, he's going to disturb my practice. But then I said, well, he's going to sing anyway. I can't stop him. So why don't I have a different attitude towards it and see if I can enjoy it? And oddly enough, I found myself getting less tired, and my energy was working much better. So I got a little deeper into it. He does his riyaz for a long time, so I could do that. So afterwards I talked with him, and he said something like, yes, I've heard that this can give energy like that. So I said, well, why don't we try this with some of the yoga students? So he agreed. And we went back to the ashram, and I got some of my yoga students in the area to come, and we experimented with this. And they all felt better without exception. So I started adding yoga and sound I started teaching regular workshop yoga and sound.
So you were listening to him and you felt more energy in your practice. Were you just listening to him, or did you find yourself also in your mind chanting to yourself what he was chanting?
No, I was just listening.
Okay.
I found that later very important, because when I tell my students to do it, they begin to sing or chant with it. And to teach the mind how you can simply let the thought run in a systematic, proper way, but not do any vocal movement or action is quite difficult to do. Especially when the chant is repetitive. Slowly it starts, my mind starts going with it. And one exercise I learned at a Zen center here was very important. They were teaching slowly count from 1 to 10 and back from 10 to 1. Then 1 to 9 and back from 9 to 1. And it's very quickly the mind begins to go 8, 9, 10 when I should be going backwards. That mechanical habit takes over. But that taught me how to train my mind to simply think of the chant, almost like I'm listening to somebody else chanting, and not make any facial expressions or no response from my physical body.
For people who don't know your teachings, can you say what yoga and sound is? Like what is the idea behind it? What's the force of it?
There are several ideas. The most basic idea is what I just described, which is you seem to not get as tired. I had a very, very much senior lady to me, older lady, and she's in Trikonasana. She insists on coming to my advanced class. But she got out of Trikonasana beaming with smile and says, Ramanand, I don't feel tired.
But I know you're a curious person, so what's behind that? It's vibration, right?
It's vibration.
Can you say anything about that and from the yoga perspective?
I think the idea in the yoga that I can push more than I think I can, where the mind comes as a blocks it. That mind is so engrossed into listening to a pleasant sound that blockage doesn't come. The idea that I cannot do something or that I'm getting tired, it's like the story I tell that, my mother says to me, go get some milk, and I'm too tired. But it says, by the way, get a chocolate with it, and I'm not tired.
Right.
And
But-
even at a young age, that kind of surprised me.
But the yogis talk about that the universe is made up of vibration. So, and that Sanskrit is one of its attributes, I'll say, is the sound that it creates, and that the sound creates vibration that is healing or has an effect, I'll say. So wouldn't that be what's behind the yoga
I think
and sound?
so. I think that's correct. But I think more important is that what I just said is that normally when I'm not well, I'm struggling with something, my mind is on, I'm struggling. Okay? This vibration completely cuts it out.
So there's a level of listening to it, and then there's the level of chanting it out loud, and then there's the level of chanting it to yourself.
And then there's a level of silently chanting. Okay? In fact, most of the chanting...
Wait, what's the difference of chanting it to yourself and chanting it silently?
Chanting is silently, there is no sound.
Meaning you're just thinking about it?
You're just thinking about it.
Okay.
But it's not like I'm thinking of it. It's more thinking like I'm mentally lost in it. Yeah, the only example I can think of readily is I love geometrical problems. Okay? So when I'm solving it, I'm not saying I am solving this problem. I'll get lost into it. Very different kind of thinking. Yes, thought process is what is analyzing the problem. But I'm not saying to myself, I'm thinking.
Okay, so besides having more energy, can you say more how yoga and sound has helped you either with the physical issue or...
It helped me, many years ago as a young boy when I had heard of chakras and so on. Nadis, chakras. I came across this both there and later in other ashrams and so on, including Swami Dayananda's ashram. Where it was like, okay, but I don't feel the chakra, I don't see it, there is the chakra. With the sound, that sense of having that kind of energy from the chakra began to become clearer.
So experiencing the vibration of the sound helped you become more aware of chakras and nadis?
Yes. And the interesting effect of it was when I'm with Mukesh, and we would kind of talk to each other like, we are going to do this asana. What kind of chant can you use? And I would suggest to him what to use, and he would say, yes, that's right. So from his point of view and from my feeling point of view, it's amazing how often we connected that way.
So do you use that all the time in your practice?
Not all the time.
So when do you decide to use it and not use it?
When I feel tired, I use much more of the sound energy.
And do you always use the same sound or
Pretty
chant?
much. Over a period, I discover what chant helps me. And I find that, similar chants help other people also. Those are probably easier chants for us.
Can you tell us what the ones you use the most?
The one I use the most is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Can you tell us what that means?
Om is a sound that precedes almost all the mantras. And that is a long story about it. We will not get into that. But Namo, salute, or we salute. Bhagavate, Bhagavan, somebody who has Bhaga. Bhaga are 4 qualities that everybody has. Only the same quality God has in infinite proportions. Humans have in limited proportion. Like jnana, knowledge, vairagya, dispassion, virya, power, strength, yash, glory, aishwarya, jnanam, vairagya, virya, yashash, shri, wealth, aishwarya, overlordship. Okay? We all have this in limited proportions. but God has these in infinite proportions. To that Bhaga who has this, Bhagavan, one who has this, to him, to would mean Bhagavate. So to him we salute. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. One in whom the universe resides, symbolically.
So your salutations to all.
To whole creation.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the one you use the most.
Yes.
And is there another one or two that you use for different reasons?
Depending on the asana we are doing, for example, if we are doing a lot of movements and jumpings kind of thing, then Om Namah Shivaya is better.
Because it's faster.
Yeah, because it's faster, shorter.
Okay. Any others?
What else? For relaxation more. Narayani Namostute.
And what does that mean?
Narayana is one of the names of the Lord. Narayani is the mother aspect of that. To salute this mother.
And why is that better when you're relaxing?
I think primarily because of the vibration.
So it's
What
a
I
slower
discovered,
vibration?
Huh?
Is it a slower, faster, different than?
It's different.
Okay.
It's a little slower, but it's definitely different. It was interesting to see that people who don't know the meaning of the mantra at all still have the same effect. In fact, knowing the meaning may interfere. An example I would give you out of Mr. Anga's story is one time I sent him a recording of a cadaver. Okay. Very good recording, I thought it was. He looked at it and is, yes, it's good to know the anatomical system, but it will also interfere with your practice. Because you now expect a muscle to do something, and that muscle may have nothing to do with it.
So sometimes intellectual knowledge gets in the way.
In the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the mind starts analyzing from the perspective of knowing, when actually not knowing is better. Like an example I'd give you, if when a child learns to walk, if the child could ask like, which muscle shall I use? It probably would not walk.
Right.
Okay? Do it experientially, forget about logic. Later, if you learn the logic, it may be helpful.
Well, okay, so I'm thinking about this part of our conversation in relationship to what we just talked about with Mr. Iyengar, and if I think about a lot of the senior teachers and the paths, you know, a lot of people went in different paths, and you went towards yoga and sound. Is there anything that you can think of in your past that may have predisposed you to be responsive to yoga and sound?
Oh, yes. My father had very beautiful voice, very melodic voice.
So he sang to you? Or did you sing together?
No, he chanted himself. We would hear it. Occasionally we would sing together. But that memory is very strong in me. So when I heard Mukesh singing and having a different way, a classical quality to it, it was
That's beautiful.
very beautiful.
Especially because you said your father was your first teacher.
Yes,
Yeah.
very beautiful.
Okay, so yoga and sound is something that you went on to discover, I'll say, and teach after studying with Mr. Iyengar. And the other thing I'm curious about, and we'll do a separate talk on chakras and nadis, I hope, but I've never heard Mr. Iyengar talk about those things, and you do talk about them. So
I do talk about him, and I have... Mr. Iyengar did not like that.
do you know why?
Probably because he did not ever try it, and he thought it was not a good way to spend time. In fact, the story as we heard it, although Prashant denies this, is that Prashant is a musician. He was playing violin. The story around the community is that Mr. Iyengar forced him to, he basically said, either concentrate on music or concentrate on yoga. You can't do both. And Prashant has actually sat on a platform and denied that, no, my father never forced me to do this. But later, when one of my students went to Prashant and told him that I was doing yoga and sound, his response was, there is no yoga without sound and there is no sound without yoga, which I thought was a beautiful support. But his father would not agree with that.
Interesting.
Now apparently Prashant includes different kinds of sounds.
Okay, so now you're relating sound with the chakras and the nadis.
Yes.
Can you say more about that?
Every chakra has a primordial sound
Right.
associated with it.
Right.
Okay. Knowing those sounds and not knowing intellectually, having someone like Mukesh sing those and then seeing the effect of those sounds, that gets more. I wish I had more time to practice that.
You could get up earlier at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, I could, but I would die faster then, and you don't want me to do that.
Kidding. And then what about nadis and sound? Is there?
See, let me tell you something. I have very clear understanding that in this incarnation, this body has probably reached its limit. Okay? I'm not eager to die, but at the same time, I'm very confident that I will have another body. You people coming from another tradition don't have that benefit.
You people. You mean,
I mean Christians and Muslims and Judeo-Christian traditions.
I've got news for you. I'm coming with you. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
going to incarnate around you the next time, whatever planet that
Okay,
is. So,
on one
yeah.
condition you can come with me. No interviews.
Okay, this is the only interview for this life?
On this plane.
On this plane. Okay. All right, I'll agree to that. On tape. Okay, so nadis. Do nadis have sounds associated with them?
Not that I have associated with, no.
Okay. So.
But now that you tell me, maybe I will look at it.
All right. Well, I just have to interview you again. So yoga and sound, chakras and nadis are things that Mr. Iyengar didn't teach you. Are there other things that you can think of? I'm just thinking because I'm your student. Other things I didn't get to study with Mr.
Mr. Iyengar both encouraged me and publicly discouraged me also.
In what
Privately,
way?
he would encourage me.
Encourage
Like
you.
he would say, you are an engineer, you should be able to invent more props. Which was correct, and I did. Okay? But publicly his attitude would be, who do you think you are? How can you invent anything? So I have come up with ways of working with props that he never showed. And in effect only my students know it. But I think one time I was in India, at the end of a class, I was sitting outside at Iyengar Institute. He came and sat down with me and he said something like, what, Ramanand, this knowledge will die with me. He was in his peculiar way encouraging me to do more. But my response to him was, Guruji, how can it ever die? This is God-given. Okay? Every time one great master dies, it seems like some another one comes up. Okay? So why will that process stop? And he kind of liked it.
Yeah, that's good.
It's unlimited knowledge. For anyone to say that I have all the knowledge, compared to somebody else, that person might have more knowledge. But all the knowledge, you can't limit human ability like that. Everything that we thought could not happen, humans cannot do, humans found a way of doing. Like whoever thought of flying, considered totally impossible. Even with the first few airplanes that were invented, it was like, 100, 600 yards maybe. But you can't go from one country to the other. Completely changed. Travel to the moon, unheard of. In fact, I remember in my school days when one of the caretakers, or I should say evening kind of guard for the school, I played soccer. We come and sit down on the steps of the school. This African askari, we call him, which means policeman really. He comes and sits down to me and says, Bwana Patel, and he's talking Swahili, says, explain to me, what is this Russia doing, going up with, what is this? Just the Sputnik has just been put up.
Oh, Sputnik, okay.
Very first Sputnik. So he was asking me, like I have read in my paper, in Swahili paper, what is this happening? What are they trying to do? And I said to him that they are trying to go to the moon. And he just burst out laughing.
As if that was ridiculous.
He says, my religious books tells me that, that is impossible to do. Yeah. He basically said, with all your knowledge, you know nothing. That was the words he used. Like, you can't contradict my book.
That's very funny. Okay, so just to end this particular section of our talk, is there anything else you want to say about Mr. Iyengar, what you learned from him, how he affected you, or things that you learned afterwards? Anything that comes to mind?
I think what we were talking about over dinner is probably a good story of how science is limiting. Like at some point, some American doctors came and asked Mr. Iyengar if he would agree to do experiment on the effect of Shirshasana, head balance. He agreed. They went to a place called Lonavala, where there were students of that institute, 6 or 7, I don't know how many exactly. They were all put into Shirshasana. Within about 10 minutes, all of them come down. And what these doctors measured was how long it is before their blood pressure comes back to normal.
But Mr. Iyengar's still up in headstand.
Mr. Iyengar in head balance. So, according to the story I heard, 20 minutes go by, 30 minutes go by. These people get little tired and say, so how long are you going to stay here? And he said, as long as you want. And so they went away. Came back after another 20, 30 minutes. He's still in Shirshasana. Same question was asked, like, how long will you stay? He said, as long as you want. Now it's over an hour. So they also come down. And then they measure his blood pressure. It doesn't come down to normal. So they're shaking their head. Mr. Iyengar asked them, like, what are you looking for? He said, well, everybody's blood pressure came down within a short time. Yours is not coming down. Oh, you want me to bring my blood pressure down? Wait. He goes into Sarangasana and he brings his blood pressure down. Scientific experiments done on yoga are often not valid because the one who does the experiment doesn't know anything about yoga. He comes from what he considers scientific point of view.
Right.
But he doesn't know what yoga does.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, when in yoga they show surprising thing, the response from science is, oh, interesting. Okay? It doesn't investigate why it is like that.
Right. Yes, I've seen, I don't remember what yogi it was. I want to say it was Swami Rama or something, but they were studying him, how he could make his heart slow down and things like that, but they didn't really look into.
So did Krishnamacharya.
Yeah.
To the point where with a stethoscope you cannot detect a heartbeat. Person is dead.
And they say, interesting.
Interesting.
Okay. So what is, just to end that note, so what does that mean to the medical community and the yoga community? How does...
I think they should combine much more seriously together.
I think that's starting to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Medical people should not come as an authority on yoga to look at yoga. They should come with, we are an authority on how to use these instruments. We understand something about the body. You seem to have a completely different understanding.
The problem that I see with that is that I agree with what you're saying, and you can't encapsulate what yoga is to someone who doesn't know anything about it.
Not too different to what both of us experienced with Zhuhang in China. The man does this with his hand and touches you. He has nothing connecting him to any electrical source, but he gives you 200-300 volts of electricity through you. When I tell my American friends that this is what happened, they kind of look at me very kindly and say, "Are you sure he was not hiding something?" Yeah. Inability to conceive that something they don't know anything about can happen.
Like going to the moon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ramanand. We will continue this if you're willing.